think we're ready, Brady. Yeah. Welcome to Shift. Today we are talking with Steve Vanderboom of our congregation about Water Mission. And Steve, welcome. This is an organization you've worked with for a while. Can you tell us a little about Water Mission?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Carolyn. And thank you all for your interest in providing safe drinking water and living water to people around the world. On October 7th, we're having our 8th annual Walk for Water in St. Paul at the Upper Landing Park. Many of you have participated and supported this before. I appreciate that and hope that we can build support for our walk again this year. So I thought I would start by sharing a little bit about how Julie and I got involved with this. How did this start? Because one of the things that all of you think about when you're supporting a cause is, well, who is doing this? Is it real? Is the work good? Is the money being well spent, well managed? So I want to give you some background that'll help with that. Founded a company called Pace Analytical a long time ago, 1978, and to learn more about what we were trying to accomplish, we'd go to industry meetings, and there was a group called the American Council of Independent Laboratories, which represented the business we were in, and we'd go to these meetings, and we met a couple at one of the meetings from Charleston, South Carolina, by the name of George and Molly Green, and we really liked George and Molly. They just seemed like lovely people, and so we looked forward each year, wherever this annual meeting was, to catching up with George and Molly, and that went on for, I would say, over a decade. But then in about 1999, we went to a meeting, and they weren't there, and started asking around, where were they? And we heard that they had sold their business, which was kind of disappointing because we really would have liked to have bought their business. But a little side note. But they sold it to their employees, and then I heard that they had they were doing something related to providing water, in different places, and we lost track. And this is where it's an interesting story because Trinity actually has Trinity, I would say, is the key connection to us reconnecting with George and Molly and learning about Water Mission. So it was probably about 12 years ago or so. Many of you may have met a member of Trinity at that time, Randy Hogan. And Randy Hogan was CEO of Pentair Corporation in town. And Randy and I had become friends through Trinity. I think, if I recall right, we were standing side by side bidding on something at the youth auction in February. And he didn't want to stop, and I finally did. So I had to meet Randy, and we ended up becoming friends, and we played golf one summer, and we were having lunch after golf, and I said, well, what have you been doing? And he said, well, I just got back from Honduras. I said, so Randy, I know you weren't in Honduras working. You don't have a factory there, and I know you weren't on a golf vacation. So what were you doing? And he said, well, actually, our foundation made a large contribution to this group who's installing water systems, safe drinking water, in communities, this large community in Honduras. And he was getting very excited telling me about it, and he says, we're working with this great couple out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I looked at him, I said, George and Molly? And he goes, how do you know George and Molly? And so I talked about it. So Randy goes on to say, you have to stop and see what they're doing. They started this group called Water Mission, and they're just doing fabulous work. And so, traveling around quite a bit, next time I was headed down that way, I gave George a call, and he said, "Oh, great, come on down, bring Julie, stop, come stay with us." And we stopped and looked at what they were doing, and were just blown away. Somebody here has been to Charleston? Yeah, Jill's been to
Jill,
Charleston
yep.
and saw what they do there. But it's amazing work. So we decided to become a corporate partner of theirs with Pace Analytical, and we supplied them with drinking water testing services and helped them with some research and development to try to figure out, there aren't a lot of testing labs in Uganda or Kenya or Tanzania or Honduras. So how do you test this water? And how do you get a sample back if you're coming back to the U.S. And you go through customs? If you could get a water sample in your carry-on, which you can't, and then you said, well, it's contaminated water from Africa. They probably wouldn't let it go through. So we worked with them to develop an extraction device to extract the pollutants out of the water, and then you could slip it inside of a pen, put it in your pocket. And so we
undercover water.
Yes, right. So we did a lot of work with them and just got to know them better and better. And their big fundraising effort each year is a Walk for Water in Charleston, where they have over 500 people coming out. It's a big event and celebration. And I thought, well, maybe we could try a Walk for Water in the Twin Cities. Twin Cities a lot larger community than Charleston. Maybe we can build some momentum and try to increase awareness and raise funds for Water Mission. So that's how we got connected to Water Mission. And over the years, we did more and more work with them and spent more and more time with them. And we just saw that the work they were doing was really good work. They're a Christian engineering ministry. And a couple key words there, they're strong Christian faith, and they know why they're doing this. But the other word that's terribly important is engineering. Right. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that, because these systems have to be sustainable. They have to work, and they make sure that they do. So that Water Mission has been going now for about 23 years, and in that time, they've actually become probably the largest organization of their kind doing this kind of work. I believe that their budget this year is going to be somewhere in the 35 to 40 million range.
Wow.
And that's not government funding. That's all private funding. So they do a lot of great work, and with our walk here, we can help them do that work. Now, what I'd like to do is, move on to a slide and just share a little bit about what is the global. When you hear about the global water crisis, what are we talking about? And I will tell you that for the purposes of what I'm talking about, we're not talking about climate change, and we're not talking about drought. We're talking about the fact that 2 billion people in the world, so close to 1 out of 4 people, don't have regular, easy access, safe drinking water in their homes. There are 800 million people who really don't have access at all, and they have to walk to access water. And the people who walk to access water are always the women and children, not the men. And so it has a huge impact on the development of communities. The sad fact is that 829,000 people, about, this estimates coming from the World Health Organization, die each year of waterborne disease. Nobody dies of waterborne disease in the U.S. This is a very simple problem to solve, but it's a huge problem that hasn't been solved out there. So that's 2,300 people per day dying of waterborne disease, almost all in developing countries. And of course, the battle to bring that number down is hard because that's where the populations are growing the most around the world. And the other sad part is that most of these people who die are children under 5, and you can understand what happens. They drink contaminated water, they get diarrhea, they die of dehydration. So it's a solvable problem, and a terrible one. The other factor that relates to why the global water crisis is so hard to solve is that approximately 30% of the water systems that have been installed and are operating in rural communities in developing countries are not operating at any given time. So a very well-meaning organization will go in, drill a well, provide water, celebrate with the community their access to safe drinking water, and leave, but there's not a system in place to keep it operating. And there's not a way to collect money, there's not a way to prepare to repair that pump or replace that pump when it breaks, and it fails and the people go back to their contaminated water source. So that's the definition of the global water crisis that we're trying to solve or end. So this was advertised as a talk about our trip to Honduras, and we did go to Honduras in May with the Board of Water Mission and the Global Water Center to see their work. The Water Mission started in Honduras after Hurricane Mitch, which was 98 or 99, and George and Molly's daughter had been on a mission trip in Honduras and gotten to know the people, and the hurricane hit and they wanted to help, and that's how they got started. As a result, they have a very large program in Honduras right now. They have 50 employees in Honduras installing water systems in communities there. Honduras is a country with 10 million people. 7 million of those people don't have access to safe drinking water. When we visited, we were staying in, decent hotels and communities, but we were always advised not to drink the water. When you brush your teeth in the morning, use bottled water. It's just not safe. And when you tour the country, you get a sense for what it is. And many of you, I think, here have volunteered on the mission trips in El Salvador, and you've seen the same exact conditions, I'm sure.
You have to bring your own water or buy bottled water, which is,
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Just, every day.
Every day. So this is, we took a lot of pictures, and I'm not going to show a lot of pictures, but this is not an unusual picture of a home and a community in the areas that we were visiting. And of course, it does not have access to safe drinking water. And what we did while we were there was we visited 5 different installations of Water Mission had installed, and one of them was from about 20 years ago, and still, being well cared for and operating. This system was the largest one that they had installed, and it was just being, they did the ribbon cutting while we were there, which was a fun celebration. And I want to, I'll tell you a little
There's
side
one
story.
sightseer.
A little side story is that the vice president of Honduras decided to spend the day with us, going around to the different communities. And Julie's having a talk with her. You want to, what were you talking about there, Julie? Yeah. Loud. Like as if you're yelling at me.
No, so this woman was quite a character, but she was a single mother, had raised 3 children, had a special needs child, She was well aware of the issues in their country with lack of education, lack of opportunities, but so what she was sharing, she said she really liked Water Mission because they acted. She said, like the World Health Organization will come, and all they like to do is stay in nice hotels, have nice meals, and talk. And she doesn't see action. And that's what really moved her with Water Mission. It was a group that came in, they kept their word, and they sustained their systems. And it was just interesting hearing that perspective from a native of the country and who has some power to have an impact. She spoke English, yeah.
And she was, part of her mission and her role was to empower women in Honduras, and she understands that this lack of water is hardest on the women and children in homes. Honduras, a very poor country, average GDP less than $3,000 a year, unemployment about 40%, and so the comparison to what we know and live is nothing close. Interesting fact about Honduras: the largest source of income in Honduras. Anybody want to take a guess?
Coffee.
Coffee? No. I guess drugs, but actually, remittances from the U.S. for people who have immigrated there is the largest source of income, which, when you see this and talk to people, helps you understand our southern border and why people take the risks that they take. So the bringing water to these communities changes the communities. It causes the communities to grow. It allows them to start to concentrate on some of the other things they need to concentrate on to develop the economy in their community. This water system, just to give you a sense for the engineering part of Water Mission, this is what the filtration system looked like inside. This source of water was a spring, so it was surface water. So it is, potentially contaminated by anything that it could be exposed to on the surface. These are the chlorinator systems to kill the bacteria. This is for the operation of it, the flow chart of how it works, and to help train the operators in their committee and community how the system works. So this is what the system. This is a more sophisticated system than most of them, and larger. This is serving a community of a little over 2,000 people, and they're projecting, that community will very rapidly grow to probably 3,000 people because they have safe water.
Right. So out of their tap or wherever they get their water,
yeah,
they're able to then have clean water like we might?
In this case, they actually pipe the water to the homes. In a lot of cases, they just have community taps in convenient locations for people to access water.
So they might not have any infrastructure at all.
There's no sanitation system in almost all of these communities. So sanitation, water's sort of a number one problem, sanitation right behind it.
Is another, yeah.
Right. We did find that in the hotels we stayed in, we were advised that when we used toilet paper, we weren't to flush it. It goes in a receptacle next to the toilet. And I was thinking about that, and I'm wondering, is the system just not designed? Are the pipes too small, or what's? So I finally asked, and I got an answer I was like embarrassed not to have thought of. Oh, there's no system. It's going into an open ditch, and they don't want the toilet paper in an open ditch. So,
Wow.
yeah. So the country, I just say, is a naturally beautiful country. People are beautiful. The communities are so thankful, for the systems once they're installed. Water Mission, creates a community program, a water committee with all the different functions defined. The people have to pay for the water. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. So people have to pay for the water once these systems are installed, and they set up funds to pay for the pump when it breaks, or repair the filter when it breaks, or replace a valve, buy chlorine to be able to keep it operating. So that's the way it's set up. I want to shift here to our Walk for Water last year and the results. So we had a number of virtual walks in communities around the country. So we had over 1,000 people who walked. We raised $225,000 last year, which was a record for us. And that funded the installation of a water system in a community in Peru. And it also funded a number of installation of reverse osmosis systems in Ukraine, in neighborhoods where the infrastructure had been destroyed in the war, and they'd lost their access to safe drinking water. So our funding and your efforts last year impacted, we estimate, over 4,000 lives. I've got the name of the community in Peru, which I couldn't pronounce. So, So around 420 people in that community who now have access to safe drinking water. The Trinity Group has been a sponsor of this and a wonderful supporter of this over the last several years. This is a picture from several years ago, but we had a whole bus full of people one year come down, and we had a beautiful day. We usually have a beautiful day, and early October is my favorite season in Minnesota, so I'm saying the odds are pretty good. We'll have a beautiful day for a walk along the Mississippi River in downtown St. Paul. We walk about 1.5 miles with an empty bucket to simulate, the daily activity of many people. We put water in that bucket. So, to be honest, I put about this much water in that bucket because it gets heavy carrying it back. But if you fill the bucket, it's a task, and we bring that, and we pick up dirty water because, frankly, in a lot of places, that's what people are picking up is dirty water. We pick up water from the Mississippi River, and we bring it back and we dump it into a pond that then goes through a Water Mission treatment system and comes out clean and safe. So we'd love to have you support our walk this year. We'd love. I think you all have friends and family. I'll tell you, this is a wonderful thing for kids to do. Our kids don't appreciate. We don't appreciate. Our kids certainly don't appreciate what we have.
That's right.
It helps them see it. So if each of you here brought 10 of your friends, we'd have a really nice crowd from Trinity. So I'll just toss that out there. If you want to bring 20, it's even better. But get out your Christmas card list and start sending out the emails.
It's a really fun thing to do, and it's a pretty short time commitment. So, and usually the location is St. Paul, and so you walk along the Mississippi, which not everybody gets to take that walk. It's sort of interesting as well.
Right, it is. Yeah.
How many?
It's a mile and a half down, and a mile and a half back.
Yep.
It might be a little short of that.
It might be, yeah, or you might just put a little water in your bucket too, to carry. Yeah. Questions?
Steve, would you cover a little bit the sustainability of your system is because you hire someone on a local basis that has to maintain that, and that provides them employment, so they feel very responsible for taking care of those systems. Is that still correct?
Yes, the community identifies a person in the community, and then Water Mission trains that person on all of the requirements to properly maintain the system. These are well-engineered systems, but they're fairly simple. It's, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, repeat. And so the training is something that Water Mission has worked on developing, and they work with the local water committee, identifies a person in the community who then has a job, has a paying position to maintain the water system.
I think this is a really neat story about finding your passion too, and how God can work in that way. I love the story of how you encountered Molly and George, and then the Randy Hogan tie-in and Trinity, and I just think it's wonderful, and it matches what you came up with for PACE, which is all the measurements and the systems.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's a God thing, right?
Yeah, and that happens for some of us. Some of us just volunteer for a lot of different things, but no matter what it is, you can make a difference. I also like that this, we find out about something that, we can invest in, that we can trust, that actually works. It's water that's going to last when we go into communities. So I think it's pretty awesome, and I encourage everyone to walk or to donate to Water Mission. I go every year, and it's always just a great little time out walking.
Yeah. No, we'd love to have a huge crowd. I want to mention one other thing. So I mentioned that we went as a part of the board of Water Mission, and then I mentioned the Global Water Center. So let me tell you what the Global Water Center is. And it's an organization that was founded by Water Mission. So I shared the numbers with you. And by the way, one thing I didn't share was in the 23 years that Water Mission has been working, they have provided safe drinking water to over 8 million people. So if you think about that, one way of thinking about it that's impactful for me, the population of Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming together is about 8 million people. So that's a lot of people, right? But of 2 billion people, it doesn't move the needle. So they were thinking, well, we're making good progress, we're doing work, it's a lot of work, they've got a large organization, they've got a large, fundraising effort, large implementation effort all around the world, and they're doing really well, better than they expected, and they're not moving the needle on the global problem. And so they started looking at that and saying, what's missing? Where's the gap? What's it take to solve this problem? And they recognized that there actually was not a global organization with a real focus on gathering the efforts of the world together to solve this problem. So I know, a lot of you have been in business, and you know that a small organization doing something alone is not very efficient or productive. They're doing the best they can, they're doing good work, but they don't know what the best practices are, and they don't have any scale, and they can't buy efficiently, and they can't develop operating procedures. And so all of these organizations, hundreds of organizations doing what Water Mission's doing, all nonprofits, all working in developing countries, and there's nobody bringing them together to try to identify best practices, train, collaborate, monitor, and that's something that George and Molly thought, well, that's missing. How can we be much more effective with the work that's being done if we don't have somebody bringing, that everything all together? And so they formed the Global Water Center a little over 2 years ago to create that. And so 2 years, very young organization, and George asked me to serve on the board of the Global Water Center, and I agreed. And so trying to figure out how to bring everybody together around this, trying to get people to design systems using standards that create sustainable systems, and trying to provide training for people and monitoring systems. With the new technology, you can put satellite-based monitoring on a pump in any community in the world and know when it breaks down and when you need to go out and repair it. So that's what the Global Water Center is trying to accomplish. Was there a question over here? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Why is it that the country of Honduras does not have a system in place to do what you are doing? Why is it that we have to come outside and help them?
So, yeah. So Tom is asking, why doesn't a country like Honduras have a water system in place? Why do we have to come in and help them?
I would say I've used the term developing countries, a number of times. So I will tell you, I think the easiest example for me is to say, in the mid-'70s, when I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a master's degree in environmental engineering, the thing that was happening around the country was the government of the United States, probably certainly one of the, if not the most developed country in the world, one of the most developed, was passing regulations to clean up a horrible mess that they had allowed to happen. There was wastewater being discharged without treatment into lakes, streams, oceans. They passed a law called the Safe Drinking Water Act to regulate the quality of water being given to people in communities. This is 40 years ago in the United States. The term I use to describe these countries, like Honduras, is developing countries. They're not there. They're not close. The government has not, the government, there's a lot of corruption problems in developing country governments, lack of sophistication, a lack of funding, a lack of economic development to pay taxes, to install systems. So the countries, the communities in these countries simply don't have what it takes to get this done. And sometimes when they receive money from others to get this done, that money gets funneled off into people's pockets.
Well, let's give Steve and Julie a thanks for this and for their work.
Thank you. I'll say one thing in leaving. One, I got up this morning. I went to the bathroom and I flushed the toilet. I splashed some water on my face and brushed my teeth. Went out, fed the dogs, gave them clean water, and took them for a walk. Came in and took a nice hot shower, and then went down and had a little breakfast and drank some water. I probably used safe water 7 times this morning before coming to church. Didn't think anything of it. All I had to do was turn the tap. Nice advantage. We should give that advantage to more people. Okay.